Hello, today is lesson A of our pre-unit. In this lesson you will find order of operations, distance and midpoint formula, evaluating functions, and solving equations and inequalities. If there was only one standard you did not do well on, you can kind of forward and scroll through and find the part of the notes that you need to listen to. Okay, really quickly here. Order of operations, people remember it as PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, parentheses, exponents, multiplication, and division. These two go left to right. So if division happens to be first, you go left to right. And then addition and subtraction, and these two go left to right. Okay, let's just go ahead and get started. If you want to just try these problems and then check your answers, or you can watch me do the work. So I'm going to do parentheses first. Then I'm going to do exponents. So I'm going to do 100 here. So I get 3 times 100 divided by 5. And then because I have multiplication and division left, I work left to right. So 3 times 100 is 300. 300 divided by 5 is 60. Now, in this situation where we have a fraction and there's operations in the numerator and denominator, you want to look at the fraction as a grouping symbol. So kind of like parentheses. We're going to do the top, and then we're going to do the bottom, and then we're going to divide. So 26 divided by 26 is 1. Okay, down here, we're going to do exponents. So I get 2 times 64 minus 4 times 8 over 16 times 2. You can go ahead and do that because we're looking at it as a grouping symbol, and that's the only thing we need to do on the bottom. Then on the top, we're going to go ahead and do the multiplication. So we get 128 minus 32 over 32. Then we're going to go ahead and do the subtraction on top. So we get 96 divided by 32. Then we divide, which is 3. Okay, here we're going to work from the inside out. So we get 5 times 13 minus 9. So I did the parentheses, and then I did the exponents, then divided by 2. So I do 5 times 4 divided by 2. I have multiplication and division left, so I'm going to work left to right. So 5 times 4 is 20. 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, moving on. We'll take a look at the midpoint formula. Midpoint formula, just remember that when you have one ordered pair, it's always x, y. So this is x1, y1, and then x2, y2. So when you just plug it in very quickly, negative 6 plus 4 divided by 2, and then 6 plus negative 4 divided by 2. You just need to look at it as it's a point. So you have two separate answers. You get negative 1, comma 1. Okay, and then you guys can go ahead and try number 2 on your own, but what you should end up getting is 0 and negative 1/2, and it's okay if you write negative 0.5. Okay, moving on. Practice distance formula, same thing. The ordered pair is written as x, comma y. Here you want to make sure you do your order of operations, so I'll do the first one with you. We're going to do, now it does say x2 minus x1. It doesn't matter as long as you're consistent. So it's okay if you do 5 minus 8. And actually, it really doesn't matter if you end up mixing it up on the other part. I tell you guys to be consistent so that when we do slope, we don't mix that up. But if we want to stick with the formula, we'll go ahead and we'll do 8 minus 5 squared plus negative 9 minus negative 9 squared. This becomes a plus positive. So we get 3 squared plus 0 squared. We get square root of 9, which is 3. We'll go ahead and do the next problem. I'll do it the other way just so you see it doesn't matter. Negative 1 minus 5 squared plus 3 minus 2 squared. Here we get negative 6 squared plus 1 squared. We're going to end up with the square root of 37. Square root of 37 cannot be simplified, so you may leave it like that, or you can write it with a decimal. In this unit, it's okay to do that because later on in the year, we're going to practice simplifying square roots. Okay, moving on to function notation. All we're really doing here is plugging it in, substituting in order of operations. So function notation is when it is written as f of x, and then your function, you'll notice that this looks an awful lot like y equals mx plus b. You can think of it like f of x is replacing y. And we read it as the value of f at x, or what we call f of x. So here I'm going to take negative 4 and I'm just going to plug it in everywhere I see an x. Now, you are substituting -4 in, so use parentheses. Sometimes when students just want to punch this in on another calculator, they'll get the wrong answer because they're not using parentheses. So here we're going to do order of operations. We get 16 plus 8 plus 5. When you do that, you get 29. Now this one's not so bad because you're plugging in a positive. So we have 2 cubed plus 3 times 2 squared minus 4 times 2 minus 2. Go ahead and do your multiplication, your exponents. So 2 times 2 times 2 is 8. Here I'm going to do 2 squared first, which is 4, and then 4 times 3. And then -4 times 2 is -8. And then we're going to go ahead and do add across, adding and subtracting left to right, and we get 10. Okay, now we're just going to practice really quickly solving equations and inequalities. You should be pretty good at this. Hopefully you have a nice solid foundation for solving equations and inequalities. We will definitely be using it all this year. Okay, taking a look here. I see minus a negative, so I'm going to make that plus. We want to get x all by itself, so I'm going to do the opposite of what I see. If I'm adding 7, I'm going to subtract 7. So x equals -15. Okay, this problem, we want to get this term by itself first, so I'm going to add 2 to both sides. I get x over -6 equals 2. Then we're going to multiply both sides by -6. You want to get that out of the denominator, because if I read the x over -6, you're saying x is divided by -6. So the opposite of division is multiplication. So I get x equals -12. Okay, here. Now, you can distribute this fraction. However, if you do, you're going to end up with messy fractions. So anytime I see a fraction and I want to get rid of it, I multiply both sides by its reciprocal. Reciprocal is when you switch the numerator and denominator. Now when I do this over on the left, that becomes 1, and I'm left with just n plus 3. On the right, I end up with 36 over 3, which is 12. Then I'm going to go ahead and just subtract 3 from both sides, so n is 9. Okay, next problem. Now I have w's on both sides of the equation, so here I'm going to distribute. I get 4w plus 12 equals w minus 15. I'm going to subtract w from both sides, so I get 3w. Then I'm going to subtract 12 from both sides, so I get -27. And then I divide both sides by 3, I get -9. Okay? Now, absolute value equations. I don't know if you remember absolute value equations, but we are going to start off our first unit. This is in our first unit, but it will help if you have a little bit of a head start. What you want to make sure when you solve an absolute value equation is that the absolute value bars are by itself. Once it's by itself, we're going to make 2 equations. The reason we make 2 equations is because if I say, what is the absolute value of 3? What you're saying is, what number is 3, excuse me, it should be +3, is 3 units away from 0 on the number line? Well, that answer could be -3 and +3. So once I'm here, you're normally going to make 2 equations. However, in this problem, I have the absolute value bars by itself, and I have it equaling a negative number, which is impossible. So this one is no solution. Now this one, the absolute value bars are not by itself. So my first step is to divide both sides by 2. Now I have 2x plus 3 equals 4. The absolute value bars are by itself, so now I'm going to make 2 equations. 2x plus 3 equals 4, and 2x plus 3 equals -4. You solve both of those equations, and you're going to get a -1/2 and a -5/2. Okay, last thing that we need to take care of is solving inequalities. This is just like solving equations with one little difference, and I'll get to it, I believe, in the second problem. So I'm going to distribute 3w plus 6 is less than 0. Subtract 6 on both sides. I get 3w is less than -6, and w is less than -2. Done. This problem, I'm going to get rid of, you can distribute, but I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the -1/5 by multiplying both sides by -5. Now, do you remember what happens when you multiply an inequality by a negative? Hopefully you do. We need to flip the sign. So I get x minus 5 on the left. I must flip this. And on the right, I get -5x plus 45. Then I go ahead and solve. I'm going to add 5x to both sides. I'm going to add 5 to both sides. And I get 6x is less than 50. You can write it as 25/3 or 8.3. Okay, please write down any questions, comments, or concerns you have from this video, and I will see you tomorrow in class.